Well, hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome to a series of virtual events with Third Place Books. We started by calling this kind of facetiously Third Place Books from our living room because back in March when we started this series, we really were all in our living rooms. But as you can see tonight, for those of you who are in Seattle and recognize our Lake Forest Park store, I am here in our Lake Forest Park store, and you can see our majestic purple curtains here. And we are just thrilled to have you all with us. The sound you are hearing overhead is our overhead announcement. The store is closing. Wherever you're joining us from tonight, we are really glad to have you here. And I know that there are folks from all around the country and all around the world. So please sign up and sound off in the comments where you're coming and joining us from tonight. We're really happy to have you. Couple of announcements before we begin. First of all, if you have any questions tonight for Sigrid Nunez, in the Ask a Question button down there at the bottom of the screen, you can click on that and you can put your question in there. I see that some of you already have, and you can upvote questions that you like. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can at the end of the event. Now, we are here to celebrate a book tonight, a book that many of us here at Third Place have been very excited about, and I know many of you all around the world and all around the country. And that book, of course, is What Are You Going Through? The new novel from Sigrid Nunez. We are so excited to have this book out in the world, have it in our store, on our shelves. And tonight, if you have not ordered this book already, if you have not pre-ordered it or purchased it, you can do so. There's a buy the book button. It's found kind of on this side of your screen, right in the middle, kind of a teal button there. You can click on that and you can purchase a copy of What Are You Going Through? That book will be shipped to you anywhere in the country. We're shipping all over the United States. You can pick it up here at Third Place Books at one of our three neighborhood locations, Lake Forest Park, Seward Park, or Ravenna, if you're here in the Seattle area. And no matter how you choose to receive that book, whether picking it up or having it shipped to media mail and supporting our U.S. Postal Service that bookstores like Third Place Books rely on, you're supporting our local bookstore. You're helping us keep up this level of programming that we are doing. You're helping us keep these great books on our shelves. And of course, you're also helping to support authors like Sigrid Nunez and Alexander Chee, who are so, so important to the cultural and literary landscape of our country. So thank you. Thank you so much for your support. Some of you may have heard that we do have a limited selection of signed book plates on the way for Sigrid Nunez. So if you'd like one of those, hit that pre-order button, purchase a copy of What Are You Going Through? We have this book in store. It's a lovely hardcover, this great little trim size. You will love to hold and read this book. And those book plates, I'm told, are on the way. So we sound off in the notes when you order that book. Let us know you want one of those, and we'll try to get you one. While supplies last. So buy now. And again, we thank you for your support. We're doing a lot of events right now. If you would like to see more of what we've got going on, you can go on our website, thirdplacebooks.com, hit our sign up for our newsletter button, or just look at our events on our events calendar, and you'll be sure to find something else that you'll enjoy virtually here. You can also follow us at Third Place Books on most major social media platforms. And you'll be able to find out more about what we've got going on that way. And now, without further ado, I am just absolutely thrilled to get out of the way here and welcome two authors that we are so excited to be welcoming to our virtual stage tonight. These are both authors who both many of our loyal and regular customers love and talk about all the time and are always looking for new books by, and are authors that our staff has always loved and always kind of rallied to in trying times and in times where we're looking for meaning and guidance in the world. So certainly now is one of those times. From New York, Sigrid Nunez is the author of the novels Salvation City, The Last of Her Kind, A Feather on the Breath of God for Rowena, and the National Book Award-winning The Friend, among others. She's also the author of Sempre Susan, a memoir of Susan Sontag. She's been the recipient of several awards, including a Whiting Award, the Rome Prize in Literature, and a Berlin Prize Fellowship. Nunez lives in New York City, from where she's joining us tonight. Her new novel is What Are You Going Through, just out last week. And joining Sigrid, we are thrilled to have Alexander Chee. Alexander Chee is the author of the novels Edinburgh and Queen of the Night and the essay collection How to Write an Autobiographical Novel. He's contributing editor at the New Republic, editor at large at BQR. His essays and his stories have appeared in the New York Times Magazine and T Magazine, SUNY Review, the Yale Review, Guernica, among other places. And his essays have been anthologized in the 2016 and 2019 Best American Essays collections. Please, from wherever you are tonight, join me in welcoming Sigrid Nunez and Alexander Chee.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Hello.
Hello.
It's so nice to see your face.
Yours too.
So we talked a little bit over the weekend about what we might talk about, and so I thought I would just kind of leap into it with this quote of yours that I remember you saying about when you are writing something. You talked about how there's a tone that makes everything possible that you're looking for when you're writing something. And when we were, what would you say would be, how did you find that tone for this book? How did you come to it?
Well, let me begin by saying where that came from. So I was an undergraduate at Barnard College, and I took 2 workshops there with Elizabeth Hardwick, and then I had actually I'd graduated. I was in a master's program, and I I stayed in touch with her. Actually, so this was some years after that. It was actually a little bit later than I just said. So I went to see her, and I told her that I was writing about my parents, and I found that extremely difficult for all the obvious reasons. And I said to her, I mean, how do you write about, your parents, or write something that's so transparently autobiographical, a difficult thing? And she said, well, you have to find the right tone, because if you find the right tone, you can write about absolutely anything. Mm-hmm. And I kept that in mind, and I would read all kinds of work that struck me as, extraordinary difficult things to write about. Something that comes immediately to mind, Survival in Auschwitz by Primo Levi, for example. How do you write about these things? And that is an extremely successful book. It's a wonderful book, and achieves, I believe, what he wanted to achieve. And partly it's because he just has the right tone for talking about this extraordinarily difficult thing to talk about. So what she couldn't tell me was how to find the tone. And I have actually used that quote of hers in various things that I've written. I've attributed to a character or two in different things that I've written, but it was actually came from Elizabeth Hardwick. And I can't say how you find the tone, but I do know that that's how you know whether things are working or not, sometimes it happens. You have a really good subject. Well, let's talk about, say a student writing a story. Everything is there, but there's something off, and very often that thing that's off is the tone. It's just, it's just the wrong tone for the material. So when I was writing this book came very much out of The Friend for me. It's not a sequel, but I recognize, among other things, the narrator. It's very much the same narrator. It seems to me with the same sensibility, and it certainly has the same tone. And it's not like I sat down and thought, oh, now I have to find the tone. How do I find the tone? And then how do I apply the tone? It's really something you hit on, and a certain amount of it is luck. But it's something, it's something that you just have to hit on. And, but I felt like I already had done that in The Friend. And in The Friend, although I didn't think of this beforehand, but I was aware when I was writing it that I wanted a tone that, even though the book has been mistakenly called a letter, it most certainly is not a letter. It's not a letter. It's not a journal. It's a novel.
Wait, this book has been called a letter?
The Friend was called a letter. All right. So when I was writing The Friend, even though it is not a letter, though it was called a letter by certain readers, I think the confusion was because I had said in an interview that the tone I was looking for in that book was a very intimate tone, such as one would use in writing a love letter. It is not a love letter. And this book is not a love letter at all, either. And it's not a letter. But I did want that tone. It's just something I'm comparing it to. The tone of somebody speaking to the reader in this intimate way, as if it were, the same tone as a love letter. So these two books are very close in tone. So as I say, it's just something that I've always been aware of, but it's not something I could teach or describe how to find it. It's just, I think the thing is that when you have it, and that's why, when you're writing, there's a certain fluency because the tone is right. Very often when you know that you've got a good story and you know what you're trying to say and it's not working, it will be because you've lost the tone or you don't have the right tone. So that's how you know. It is a kind of it is a difficult thing to describe, but it's like it when you have it, because you're happy with how you're expressing yourself. You have a certain amount of confidence that you're saying it the way you want to say it. That's when you have the right tone.
I think, it speaks to that peculiar magic act that writing fiction is, right? Where it's something that is like you're remembering something that never happened.
Exactly.
And so it's a tone that is, for that piece of writing, one part memory, one part premonition. And there's like a kind of movement in some way between them.
Right, and the reason why you say that, I think, is also because it's when you discover that memory and imagination are really very much the same thing.
Yeah. Do you ever do any of those kinds of, do you try, when you're starting something, do you try different points of view or different points of entry?
No, I don't. I find that a little odd. I think, maybe it's just a kind of laziness, or I'm not sure what it is, but I don't, I don't want to try a lot of things. I want to make a commitment very early. With the first thing that I say, like in this book, I went to hear a man give a talk. It sounded to me like a good way to begin something, story promising opening. And then I just, I knew that it was going to be in the first person, first of all. Partly because The Friend was in the first person, and I was still in that kind of way of thinking of the voice. And then I like things to be very simple and narrow. I don't want, I guess what I'm saying is, I really don't want a lot of options. That's really what I'm saying. I feel that life, I call this the tyranny of choice. And like, I don't, don't tell me I can have anything I want on my pizza. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to spend that part of my brain having to. Okay, so it's the same thing. I don't want to have. In fact, I want a. I want the fewest options possible. I try to make as much as I can out of them. Another writer is completely opposite. Wanting to. For me, the idea is that when you start a book, the idea that you can do anything. You can write about anything. It could be a comedy, it could be a tragedy, it could be, first person or third person or second person. Central character could be this gender or another gender. It could be partly autobiographical or completely fantasy. That's to me, that's very overwhelming. Really overwhelming. It's like it's too much. So I like to get myself, in a, metaphorically speaking, in a small, quiet room. With an idea or two, and a rhythm in my head, and a voice in my head, and a character in mind, but I don't want to then think, oh, but then, it could be from this other character's point of view. That would just kind of, that would cause me to have a block. I think less is definitely more.
Well, I do think that there is a way in which these ideas come to you when the sense of limitless possibility actually comes down to really the only thing that you could do, the only path that seems obviously next. Obvious is not really the right word for it, but it's a kind of you're looking to remove the character's other possibilities through the decisions that you make.
I think it's because I feel like that if there's less, that you can go deeper. I want to go deeper instead of wider. You could say that. And I also feel that that there are just certain things that if I focus very hard on them, if I look very hard at a character, always an ordinary character. I mean, except for the memoir, which is about Susan Sontag. But all the other characters, in my books or my novels, that they're all ordinary people. And if I look very closely at some kind of experience they're having, even though it might be an extreme experience. Like I've written about a boy in a flu pandemic who becomes an orphan, a woman who's dying, a woman whose best friend committed suicide. I mean, immigrants, struggling immigrants, living, in an underprivileged situation. People who've been in prison, somebody who's served as an army nurse in Vietnam. I mean, these are all extreme situations of a kind, but they're all situations that many ordinary people have shared. And if I look at the life of one of these people very closely, and observe it as best I can, in as honest a way as I can, and tell that story, then in some way I'm writing everybody's story, So that's why I feel keeping it narrow doesn't mean that you leave out everything. You just use this narrow focus to bring everything together and to be writing about something much broader. Like in this book, this person is dying, but so are you and I. So is everyone. It's not just this one experience for this woman.
So I am remembering something that you said to me at the last dinner we had together at Cafe Loop after The Friend was published, and we were talking about people mistaking you for a dog person after the publication of that novel, and how when you thought about it, you might have had a preference for cats. So when I did get this book in the mail in advance for this event, I confess that I chuckled at the sight of the cat.
Okay.
And a few people have mentioned it, but the cat, of course, does not have quite the same role as the dog did in The Friend, it should be said. But is there any way that the cat was in some way like part of the inspiration for the book, or are you able to talk about where the book comes from other than this tone?
No, the cat was, well, and it's not that I'm not a dog person. It's just that, it's just what people say. People don't say I'm a dog person. They say I love dogs, but cat people say I'm a cat person. I think, but anyway, so I'm more of a cat person than I am a dog person. But I like them equally, and I've had both as pets. But I would always say, I'm a cat person. I'm kind of the cat person to some people. Okay, so it never, I have all my life had this, love of animals, and I have always, I did what, before I wrote The Friend, I always wanted to write a book that had an animal as a central character, particularly a dog, because dogs are extraordinary characters, and the bond that they have with humans is not like any other kind of animal-human bond. So it would have to be a dog if it was going to have that larger role, it seemed to me. And but then when I started writing this book, it never even occurred to me when I started it or as I was writing it that there would, if anybody, I had said there's going to be a cat on the cover, I would have thought, well, that's impossible. But I got to a certain point. It made sense to me that this particular character, the woman who owns the Airbnb, that she'd have a cat. There's this woman, she's living alone, she has a cat, and the cat dies. So at a later visit, or the cat has died before the story's begun. So at a later visit, I thought, oh, so she probably has a new cat. So I wrote that cat into the story. And then my narrator is about to go to sleep, and the cat jumps on the bed. And it was at that moment that I thought to have the cat also have a story about what it has gone through and is going through. And when I finished it, I thought, well, I kind of like that. The book contains lots of stories of what people are going through, different individuals, different humans. And it appealed to me to give an animal also a chance to express his story. And I didn't know if by the time I finished it or by the time the editor had a look at it, that little section, it's very short, it's just a couple of pages, whether that part would even survive. I was perfectly prepared for the editor to say, I would cut the cat part. It doesn't really fit with it, and then she just said the opposite. She loved the cat. And then it turns out that everybody seems to be very taken by that cat story. So I'm glad. And then when it was time for the art department to work on the cover, they did this beautiful job, and they too clearly felt that the cat, even though it's this most minor character in the entire book, deserved a little special attention.
This is actually, and this is one of my favorite kinds of cats. This sort of very handsome tabby sort of.
Yeah. Sort of brownish gray.
Yeah. I was the thing I remember about cats that I remembered when I was reading this is how they, like, when it's nighttime, that's when they come awake. That's when they want your attention. That's when they're like, hey, what about me? So
exactly.
That's why I stopped having them, because I just
couldn't get any sleep.
Need more sleep than that. But I still love them. Anyway, I don't want to get too far into the pet aspect, because there is something else that I think is worth bringing up, which is, so there's been a certain critical conversation, I think, say in the last 5 to 10 years about how we are entering an age that is like novels about friendship, and I do feel like certainly like The Friend and I think both of these novels in a sense share this concern with like how your friends are, how like what, and also what are the limits of friendship, what's the most we can ask them to do. Is there anything that is outside the bounds of what you can ask a friend to do? And I think in The Friend, it struck me that in some ways for that novel, it was, the narrator was struggling with the suicide. That was one of the things that is absolutely the hardest thing you can ask a friend to endure. And I suppose in some ways we are approaching that question again from another side. I don't know. Does that make any sense to you?
Well, the part about friendship, I mean, it right now there are, I think, there are quite a few novels about friendship. But I remember many years ago having a conversation with a group of writers, and this one writer brought up that at least in American literature, people, writers rarely wrote about, in detail about somebody's job. You can think of a few things. I mean, everyone has a job. Everyone works. Rarely is it's always about relationships, or I mean, there might be a novel about being in a war, which is a job also. But nobody, there just wasn't that much that you would expect that given people do so much of it. It was also not very much about motherhood. There weren't novels about motherhood. I mean, that were where that was really the main theme. I mean, there's some, but it really, you would think, given that this is something that so many people do. And then the question of friendship, it was like, and we were trying to figure out, why is it that friendship is not a big theme in fiction, and people were saying, well, it's because it's like people think, marriage or family, of which there's, of course, much literature, everything's at stake. And with friendship, less is at stake. And I think maybe, the culture has changed, or people's idea about that has changed. And now, people see friendship as a very rich subject for writing. I mean, I didn't really think about this, but I certainly didn't plan it. But my fourth novel, For Rowena, which is about the nurse who served in Vietnam, I mean, that was a friend. That was two women in a friendship. That's how that book came to be, a friendship from childhood. And then The Last of Her Kind, is most certainly about these college friends and their lives 30 years go on. That was definitely a friendship. So that was, exactly what I wanted to write about there. These two women meeting in college and becoming friends, and then enemies, and then acquaintances, and whatever. And then with this, it's certainly about this friendship. I mean, The Friend, I think, is a little bit different because, her friend who committed suicide is, not there except, as a memory. But the friendship with the dog is extremely important, and is a kind of extension of her friendship with the man. So obviously, without really planning it or even being aware of it, I mean, friendship has been, that relationship between people has been, obviously very, very, very important to me. And for me, a rich source for telling a story.
There's a moment on page 27. So there's an epigrammatic style at times in the narrator. She was just thinking, she said. Flaubert said, to think is to suffer. Is this the same as Aristotle's to perceive is to suffer? Always make the audience suffer as much as possible. Alfred Hitchcock. Suffer in succotash, Sylvester the cat. And it seemed to me,
You really deliver that line
thank you.
the way Sylvester would say that.
I mean, I do hear it a lot. It seems very, is it possibly, if not is it a little crystal heart for this book or something, like a lens to see it through?
I don't know. What I mean,
to me it did, but
I can see it.
Sorry, a range of themes.
I mean, again, it's something that because I write linearly, so everything that's there that happened in my head when I got there, and this was just. I just got to this point, and then I thought this is a way to end this chapter or whatever. Those thoughts were in my head. I mean, because I had her say, the narrator is surprised to find that the Airbnb woman has been crying. Now they don't know each other. She's just the host, and then the Airbnb host says, "Oh, well, it's nothing. Of course, I'm fine. I was just thinking, And I just thought, well, then I go on a little bit, and I thought, well, she was just thinking. Why would that? Why are you crying? Oh, I was just thinking. So it's like a non-answer, and yet it's a perfectly good answer. And as soon as I wrote that, then I thought of something that Flaubert had said, and then I thought of something that Aristotle had said, and then I thought of something that Hitchcock had said, and then I thought of something that Sylvester the cat had said, and I thought, well, let's put that down. Let's throw that out on the stoop and see if the cat licks it up. I just or as they say, let's run that up the flagpole and see if anybody salutes it. That's just that's just the way that happened.
Because there is, I mean, of course, what has just transpired is what I told my husband Dustin was like the most riveting account of going to see someone read or give a talk, which I would not have thought was like something that you could turn into some, but I felt held in every sentence of that description of the way it opens,
of the lecture. And also I was hoping also the way people responded.
Yeah. And I guess I wondered also, like, is this, you've written about climate before, I think, in certain, I think, well, a little bit in the, but not quite like this. This had
right, not delivering it like the way somebody would in a talk like that, summarizing it all. No, I've never done anything like that before. No.
And so I suppose it's that very interesting dynamic so for those who haven't read the novel yet, it opens with the narrator going to see a talk where the speaker will not allow the audience to ask any questions, which is absolutely not what's going to happen here. But it's such an interesting dynamic to create, to basically like give this like incredibly controversial statement and then just say absolutely no questions.
Go on. Sorry.
Oh, I was wondering, like, is that like one of those wish fulfillment fantasies for a writer? Have you seen someone do this, or
Well, I think that most people really want, they writers who give a reading as opposed to a lecture, let's say, but they give a reading, they are much more engaged in the Q&A than they are in the reading. So most writers, I think to do the event at all, what they would be interested in is the Q&A. And I was trying to remember if I was somewhere or heard about someone who didn't, but probably this has happened where people have said they're not taking any questions, or they didn't say it, they just ended it and then the host came out and said, "Thank you for coming here." I mean, I'm sure it's happened. It's just that we're so not used to that. And his talk was so heavy. But the narrator is thinking that, well, that this person is just wants to avoid the lecturer is like he's saying everything, and in some sense doesn't really care what you think or what your questions might be. This is it. I'm telling you. And I think that the idea is that she thinks that he's probably afraid that if he opens it up to questions and somebody says the wrong thing or whatever, that he will not be able to control himself because he's really kind of boiling over with rage. So and somebody later on suggests that he doesn't have he lacks confidence or something, about the questions, but that clearly is not it.
Yeah, it's clearly not it. I mean, it did. I had just been reading. It's The Loneliness of the Long Distance Cartoonist, which is a graphic novel that just came out.
Yes, exactly. Whose book is it?
Adrian Tomine.
Yes.
If I'm saying his name correctly. Who in that has a hilarious Q&A section where he has all these like thought bubbles going through his mind as people ask him these completely insulting questions, and and he's giving his answers like, well, that's a really interesting point, but his thought bubble is like, you're such an asshole. Like, you're such an asshole for asking me that. And it's a very funny dynamic very funny portrayal of like that aspect of the author's life, where once the questions start, you at least you can feel some obligation to be nice to people when they're not being nice to you. Although I confess I have curtailed. I put an end to that. When people are rude to me now at Q&As, I feel fine about shutting them down. But this is all a very long tangent to say that this scene, I thought, was in such an incredible way to open the book, because it felt like there's a series of vignettes, like stories within stories, that happen to create the various chambers of the novel, and that and they both feel very discrete and also entirely connected.
Well, that's how I began the book, and it is true that everything followed out of it. You start writing something, you're committing yourself to all kinds of things. That's your options do narrow down. Speaking of Q&A, would this be the moment to open it up to questions?
It seems like we are possibly at that place.
Yes, 8:40 now.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into the question box. So, let's see. I feel like we answered one of these, sort of, but our mutual friend VT Hong. The cat came in on little frog feet. I had a decent home, the cat said. Can you talk about any inspirations you had in your writing process for this section, if anything unexpected or interesting came out of your revisions?
Wait, I didn't understand. Wait, I don't.
Place where the cat enters.
Okay, wait, no. See, now this says the cat came in on little frog feet. This is a mistake. It's the cat came in on little fog feet.
Fog feet.
Fog feet, which is a joke that some people will get, people who remember the famous poem by Carl Sandburg. It goes, the fog comes in on little cat feet. It's actually a very famous line from American literature. Not the frog.
Not the frog feet. Okay. That would be...
The frog hops in. Okay. The frog comes in on little cat feet, and I don't remember the rest of the poem. So I was making a joke. The cat comes in on little cat feet. Okay, so but then the question was, can you talk about your inspirations you had in your writing process for this section? If anything unexpected or interesting came out of your revisions, if you had to choose which are your better writing companions, cats or dogs, which species would make better writers? Well, I'm going to start with the because I can't really, I don't really have any. I mean, I could go on forever about the revision process of that. I mean, basically, I just, I just wanted to write the cat's. I wanted to write the cat story, and frankly, I thought, like anyone out there, it's not hard to imagine the backstory of a rescue cat. I mean, how did it get there? Where was it? What happened to it? It was easy to imagine, and it seems, like the story that the cat would have. Now, everybody knows that the cat is the better companion for the writer, because the cat jumps in your lap and when you're at your desk and keeps you there, whereas the dog is like, I want to go out. Don't you want to go out? Want to go out? Want to go out? Want to go out? You got to go out. I mean, so like the dog is always, it's like the perfect distraction. And then as far as, judging your work, the dog, if the dog could read your novel in progress, the dog would tell you, oh yeah, this is the best. It's the best. It's the best. It's the best novel. The best novel. The best novel. Now, the cat, if it even deigns to read your manuscript, is not going to give you that. The cat will not give you that. So it's probably better for your writing life to have a cat. All right, so another question?
Yes. Let's see. Did you find your tone in the initial draft, or did you discover it in revision?
Well, actually, that is a really interesting question, because I think it would be very hard if you didn't have the tone at first to find it in revision. I mean, you'd have to because once you have one tone and it's the wrong tone, it could be quite difficult to then get to it in revision. So, I would have quit before that. I would have known before that I didn't have the right tone. So I had this from the beginning. I had the tone that I wanted, which, made it much easier to go on. Okay.
And then I think you said you write linearly. What do you mean by that? What would not be writing linearly?
Oh, well, people have different ways, and a lot of writers will write different parts of their book, or story, like they'll write the end first, and then they might, write towards that ending, or they write part of it and then and then leave a big blank and write another scene from 3/4 in. Whatever works for them, or they will make an outline which will change along the way. Whereas I write in a straight line, linearly. What I mean is that I start writing something. I write a page. I write another page. Maybe then I have like a 10-page draft of the first 10 pages, and I work on them as hard as I can to get them as good as I can, and then I move on to page 11 to page 21, let's say. And then I work on page 1 to page 21, and I just keep going along like that until I come to the end of the book, so that by the time I get to the end of the book, there might be some work that needs to be done, but certainly not full-scale revision, because basically it's done then, because I've put one foot in front of the other and written the story, as, A, B, C, D, etc. Some writers write like that, but many don't. So there could be all kinds of ways of writing a novel that would not be linear. like that.
Right. I write non-linearly, for example, and it drives me crazy, and I have got to stop. But so this has been a very interesting meditation for me tonight. A few people are asking about what you said about how remembering and imagining are similar acts, and if you would expand on that very same thing.
Well, I think that what I'm saying is first of all that we all know, we've all had that experience, and you don't have to be an old person. I mean, you can be quite a young person. You can be a child even, and the child says, "Well, I remember that birthday party, and Uncle Sam was there," and then the parent says, "Well, no, he wasn't there." Well, I remember he was there. No, I'm telling you, he wasn't there. You just remembering wrong. I mean, so. We remember really imperfectly. We remember things that never happened, and we forget things that did happen. So when you're looking back and you're remembering, what you're really doing is you're imagining things. You're putting together things that yes did happen with things that didn't, and you're all your life you remember things. All your life you're sort of telling yourself the story of your own life. You're composing this novel of your life, this narrative, let's call it, this narrative of your life along the way. You look back and you see a certain pattern. You remember things almost in a novelistic way. So so whenever you're using that's actually been said. Anything processed through memory is fiction. That has been said many times. So. Anytime you're using your memory, you're using your imagination, and when you're using your imagination, you're taking things from your own experience, from what lies in your head about things that you've experienced. So even if you change something by inventing a story, you're using a lot of your own memory in order to create it. So they're very close. They work together. But particularly this thing about how when you're remembering, it's not some kind of mechanical recall at all. It's a very creative and imaginative process to remember anything.
All right. Let's see. I have not finished the book yet, but do you think the lecturer was correct in assuming there truly is no hope left for humanity?
Well,
has your perspective changed given the events that have transpired since you published the book?
Well, his that's a very strong view that he has. I mean, it's not only his. I mean, it's a view that a lot of people have. It's a view that's supported by a lot of science. I don't really know because I can't really predict the future, but I do feel I don't see any reason to doubt what environmentalists like Bill McKibben say, which is that if Trump has a second term, that the planet's not going to survive that. I mean, you can't give that kind of power to a climate change denier and expect a happy outcome. So that certainly I would certainly have to say that. On the other hand, there is one thing that I do have a lot of hope about, which is that we all know that people do amazing things. I mean, people come up with, humankind has come up with the most extraordinary ways of solving problems. I mean, they can do face transplants. Just looking at that aspect of science, medical science, for example. They can come up with vaccines, they did conquer polio. It took 6 or 7 years to get the vaccine, but things like that. Those things happen every day in the world. I mean, people are performing what you might call miracles. The progress that people make in solving, problems that keeping people alive who longer ago would never have survived the accidents or illnesses they have. What about that? So I feel like, there is a possibility, precisely because people are so creative, so intelligent, and so inventive, that things can happen to somehow mitigate this terror that is upon us. So on a good day, I might be thinking that, but I certainly think that, that things are dire. That's for sure.
Yeah. Someone has asked about the names on my shirt.
Oh yes, what do they signify? First of all, you have to show what Zora, Octavia, Alice, and what Tony. Yes.
So Zora Neale Hurston, Octavia Butler, Alice Walker, and Toni Morrison. It's a shirt from Harriet's Bookshop, which is a shop named for Harriet Tubman, a Black-owned independent bookstore. So that's my shirt. And let's see. All right, I think we have. Let's see, another question from VT. All it did was remind her how hard it was for people to accept reality, my friend said to me. Our overpowering need to stick our heads in the sand or to sentimentalize everything, she said. What about American culture prevents or distracts us from confronting death and to plan for it as a community?
I'm not sure. This is a problem that the woman who has a terminal diagnosis discovers, that that I have certainly seen. When people have an illness like that, when people have cancer, and the way she expresses it is like it's such a difficult thing to deal with that it seems that our culture, the only way they seem to be able to deal with it is by turning it into a hero narrative. And that means that it's a battle. It's a battle between good and evil. It's a battle between patient and disease. Means that it's a battle between good and evil. And if you're, if you fight really hard, and you survive cancer, you're a hero. But then, what does that mean if you don't survive? Then then you didn't try hard enough. Then you're a loser. And it's very well known that it's not just the patients who feel that if the cancer takes the life of the patient, that the patient has failed. Doctors are made to feel like they have failed. So it's a very it's a very difficult thing for for everyone that there is this difficulty about dealing with this. And there's another part in the book where there's a support group, and there's a woman who tells her story to the support group about her husband's attitude towards her terminal illness. And it's not a story that anybody wants to hear. It's really pretty unbearable. And the result is that the listeners, the other people in the group, tell her, just don't listen. They tell her she's wrong, that she's making a mistake, she's misunderstanding her husband, and they just want to get as far away from this story as possible. So they sentimentalize it, and say it's really just his way of showing that he loves you. And this happens at different times in the book. Like this woman has such a difficult time with her daughter. And people won't accept that either. They simply say, "Oh no, it's all children love their mother. Everyone knows that." That's not really true. But nobody wants to, deal with the reality, or as T.S. Eliot said, humankind cannot bear too much reality. And in the quote from this question, they're talking about contemporary literature, and the friend of the narrator is complaining that she's sick of a certain kind of story about bad relationships between the sexes and the futility of everything and the dysfunctional families and all that. And she says that seems to be all that's out there. She exaggeratedly says, and she says either that or complete sentimentalized, crap. And so I really don't know what it is about the culture. It's probably not true just to American culture either. But there does seem to be this need to, or this failure to find a way to deal with very difficult things, people suffering, people dying, people not living up to certain kind of ideals that we think they should be living up to, that we either go into full denial or we somehow sentimentalize it. Another thing is, people who have had serious illnesses, they're used to people saying something about you have to have a positive attitude, or like just think positive, or you'll beat this, you'll get this, you'll be okay. I can feel it. You're going to be fine. I mean, these kinds of things, and then also the language of condolences, which is some of the worst. Somebody tells you that a dear one has died, and if you're not totally tongue-tied, you end up saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do? I'm sorry for your loss." But it's a very, it's really the language. Just, words fail you, particularly at these times when it's really needed, the right thing to say, a good thing to say is really needed. That's when it seems to be the hardest for people to come up with something satisfying, in situations of grief or very, very serious suffering. Anyway, I hope that answered that somewhat. So I guess do we have time for one more question? Do we have another question?
I have one tiny question for you. I thought I would slip in, which is, for me, have you heard of this expression, the essay novel?
Oh yeah.
Is there like a kind of essayistic quality to?
I think so. Yeah.
I think so.
I do. I like. It's interesting because that was a big fantasy of Virginia Woolf's. I want to write an essay novel. She talked about. I guess when she was writing 3 Guineas Men. Maybe she was writing The Hours at the same time. Maybe it was like that, and she thought that they would be the same book. I might be messing the story up a little, but she was definitely writing a work of fiction and a work of nonfiction, and she imagined them as being the same work. Kundera is somebody who writes, whom I think of as a very clear example of somebody who writes, the essay novel, and that was also his intention. Zabald has written, what you might call the essay novel. Naipaul has too. I like the idea of like in Kundera, like in the unbearable lightness of being, he's talking as himself, as the author, not the narrator necessarily, or not a character, a character who's a narrator, but he's talking about certain things, and then he'll say, this reminds me of people, these two people, Tomas and Teresa. This is how they met, and he invents a whole story about them. Then he talks about Czech history, talks about 20th century European history, and he talks about Beethoven. All these little sections where he stops the story to digress. And that's something that I like, and that I think the contemporary novel, that form works very well, where you have a story, you have a plot, you have characters, but you feel free to stop at certain points and do what Javier Marias called literary thinking, where you reflect on something, or there's a meditative section, or even a rant of some kind. Yes, yeah, I really like the idea of the form of an essay novel. I mean, it can be, you have different kinds of essay novels, but basically they do. It's a form that allows you to include a certain amount of nonfiction.
Well, such a huge pleasure. Welcome
Thank
back
you.
to our host.
Welcome back.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It has indeed been a huge pleasure. For me, this is one of the best parts of my job is when I just get to spend an hour with my headphones on back here, just listening to the two of you go. And I think just watching the chat, it sounds like that's been lots of other people have been experiencing that joy as well. So thank you so much. It's been a balm in the middle of definitely a trying week. We are so glad to have you both here. Again, the book is What Are You Going Through by Sigrid Nunez. Here it is one more time. There's the cat, the oft discussed cat. Please do pick up a copy of this book if you've not already. You can hit that buy the book button down there at the bottom. That'll take you to our website where you can purchase this book, many other books by Sigrid Nunez, books by Alexander Chee, another one of our favorite authors here at Third Place Books. We thank you so much for your support. Your support allows our store to stay open and keep doing these events. It also allows your authors, your favorite authors, to keep writing and keep thinking and keep digesting what it is to be alive right now, and we need that. So we so appreciate you. Thank you so much. Wherever you are tonight, we are so glad that you could join us and hope that you'll see us again. Again, check us out, thirdplacebooks.com, see what else we've got going on. And again, wherever you are, be well, stay safe, read good books, do good work, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much, Sigrid Nunez, Alexander Chee, all of you out there.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.